What's up guys, I've been in Manchester today doing a talk to an energy company about Formula 1 as I do. On the way back now, back to London on train, so I thought I'd do a quick random Ask Elvis because we've got a load of questions. I didn't really get through any this week because we didn't really manage to do a full Ask Elvis video as you normally do on Monday. So we'll crack through a few now. Right, we'll start with this one. Ralph Gutierrez says, Seb's antics after the race, although comical, should get reprimanded, fined or loss of points. He disrespected F1 and us fans. The question, what are your thoughts on his behaviour? Now lots of people have talked about this, mentioned this in the comments, talked about how he's bringing the sport into disrepute, how he should be punished for it. Do you know what, I actually don't think he should. I think that's exactly the sort of behaviour or the sort of reaction, the emotional reaction we want to see from Formula 1 drivers. Yes, it was petulant, it was childish, it was silly, but at the end of the day, he came out of that looking pretty bad. Formula 1 fans will be looking at him thinking, that was petulant, that was childish, it was silly. So that's up to him if he wants that to be the impression that people have of him, but the reality is he was acting on emotion, he was acting on instinct. He was reacting to the way he felt at that moment, and that is what we want to see from Formula 1 drivers. We don't want to see every response being carefully considered and thought out and prompted or guided by the team. We want to see drivers getting emotional. We want to see them showing some passion, whether it's in a good or bad way. I don't think we should be able to control that. I think we should just get absolute raw passion in the heat of the moment. It makes a better viewing experience. So for me, it shouldn't be punished. You know, he's controlling, or he is affecting the way that he's seen by fans around the world, and if that's in a negative response, if that's in a negative way because of his actions, that's punishment enough. Monkey says, hi Mark, what is meant by the term mechanical grip? Well, mechanical grip is basically all the grip of a Formula 1 car that is not aerodynamic grip. So we get grip generated by aero, which is pushing the car down into the racetrack. Of course, that increases grip. Mechanical grip is the grip that is generated by the chassis dynamics, by the way that the suspension works on the car and how it moves weight around the car, how the suspension reacts to lumps and bumps in the racetrack and corners, and how it generates heat through the tyres, and so all the other types of grip that are using mechanical means, like the movement of suspension components, the movement of tyres, the movement of the chassis itself, that's what we mean when it comes to mechanical grip. So we talk about mechanical grip being really important around places where it's slow speed corners, for example, where downforce is at its minimum level because the speed's so low we don't get much in the way of downforce. Then mechanical grip becomes really important. Places where there are circuits like Monza where you have such a low level of downforce anyway, which gives you the downforce on the straights because the speeds are so high, but when you slow down into the corners at places like Monza, you have almost, you have very little aero grip. So then you're reliant on mechanical grip from the chassis, from the car, to keep the car on the road. So that's hopefully a bit of an explanation of what that means. I hope that makes some sense. Halgo Malings, I hope I got that right. Halgo Malings says, have you ever had the opportunity to drive a modern or vintage F1 car on a racetrack? No, I haven't. I wish I had, but I haven't. The closest I ever got was, I've sat in the race cars, obviously loads, have run up, fired them up, driven up through the gears on stands with the wheels spinning, but never on a racetrack. I would have loved to have a go. The closest I ever got really is in the simulator at McLaren, which is an unbelievable experience, and it's amazing on so many levels. But I don't think anything could ever compare to driving an F1 car. So I would have loved to have done it. Would still love to do it, but unfortunately never got the chance. Straders says, hi Elvis, just listening to commentary during the Canadian Grand Prix, and they mentioned Verstappen and Norris on hard and soft tyres respectively. The implication was that the soft tyre would be faster on the straight, but if there's no wheel spin, how can this be? So what they're talking about then is the speed at which you're able to accelerate at the start of a long straight. So it's about traction out of a slow speed corner onto a long fast straight. And with a soft tyre, you're able to put more energy through that tyre before you get to wheel spin, because it has so much more grip, because it's softer, it bites into the tarmac more, it has more movement in the tread or in the tread surface, and that means we get more grip. So you can transfer more energy through that tyre to accelerate the car forwards without it slipping, without getting wheel spin. On a harder tyre, if you put the same amount of maximum energy through the tyre, max throttle if you like, or max amount of torque, you would get the tyre slipping earlier than with a soft tyre. Because the tyre is so hard, it would skid over the surface rather than deforming and gripping into the surface. And therefore you have to be a little bit more gentle on the throttle out of a slow corner when you're on the harder tyre to make sure you don't get wheel spin. So you may not get wheel spin on either of those tyres leading onto a straight, but that's only because of the way you drive it, the way you apply the throttle, how much torque you put through it. So it's about driver input and about the settings that you have, of course, as well on the steering wheel that affect various systems, but it's all about the amount of energy you're able to put through a tyre without it slipping to propel you forward. And the soft tyre will give you a lot more. So therefore, the acceleration's better out of a slow corner, and therefore you'll reach maximum speed quicker on a long straight on a softer tyre than you would on a hard tyre, where your acceleration might be slightly delayed because of the reduced amount of torque you can put through it.
Stoke-on-Trent.
There you go.
When leaving us here, make sure.
Jason Lee says, hey Mark, in all your years at McLaren, did you ever get to go on the podium to accept the Constructors Trophy? No, I didn't, Jason. And actually, we never really did that back in those days, or back in our day. There we go again. Back in my day. We never really did that back then. It was always kind of either Ron Dennis or Martin Whitmarsh or Norbert Haug of Mercedes. We didn't just really do that. We didn't send up various members of the team. I think it's a really nice thing that happens these days. I kind of wish it had happened because it would have been amazing, but I think it's a really nice thing that members of the team from all aspects of the team are now getting recognised when there's some success and sticking them up on the podium if they've had some major input into that particular victory. So it's a lovely touch. I wish it had happened, but it didn't. Matthew Butcher says, I think Vettel may retire this year regardless of a contract with Ferrari next year. Any thoughts? Love the videos, keep up the amazing work. Thank you, Matthew. I don't think he will. I know Sebastian came out with he was pretty down, wasn't he, after the Canadian Grand Prix for so many reasons, and he came out with some pretty philosophical statements about how Formula One's not the Formula One that he fell in love with, and I definitely get all that, I understand that. I can't see him giving up. I mean, why would he give up? First of all, he's got a contract with Ferrari that pays him many, many millions. Now, that's the first thing. And secondly, he's not in a bad car. He's in a Ferrari, which is on the brink of being the best car in Formula One. Yes, he's been beaten thoroughly by Mercedes at the moment, but he's on the brink of another World Championship. It could easily happen. If the cards fall the right way next year, and they manage to get that car right, get the decision-making process right, he could be in a very, very good position. And so I can't see him willingly giving that up. Beyond the end of this contract, then I can definitely see him potentially walking away from the sport. We've got Charles Leclerc coming through, who undoubtedly will be the next big thing at Ferrari, and they're building a future which probably doesn't include Sebastian Vettel in the long term, both from his perspective and theirs. Mustafa El Madani, I hope I got that right, apologies if I didn't. He says, why was Vettel so slow at the end of the race? Even Leclerc could catch him and take the second place from him. Okay, well, Sebastian was slow at the end of the race and the second half of the race, and Lewis was catching him, if you remember, wasn't he, before the incident with 22 laps to go. You may remember there was a call on the radio we all heard where it said the numbers on your dash are real, take action. That was referring to fuel saving. So he was using a lot of fuel. They had no safety car, which they were kind of factoring in and thought they would get, didn't get it in the end, and therefore he had to save a lot of fuel towards the end of the race, and that's why he wasn't able to push to the same level that he had been earlier on, and therefore that's why he was slower and had Lewis all over the back of him. But all he needed to do, of course, up until that incident, was keep Lewis behind, so he didn't need to push that hard. Lewis was putting pressure on, but Sebastian just needed track position, which he was able to get by just using the extra fuel on the straights to stay ahead, and then turning things down, backing off, lifting and coasting into some of the other areas. So I think it was a fuel saving issue that meant his pace was generally a bit slower towards the end. Right, let's wrap up with this one from Lebo. I find it really hard to believe Gasly is this slow. Max is a bloody good driver, yes, but he seems to be worse off in Red Bull than he was in Toro Rosso. Something just doesn't add up. Thoughts? By the way, love your YouTube channel, technical insight and unbiased opinions. Right, thank you very much for that, appreciate it. Hello.
Have I done it?
You have done my ticket, thank you very much, Lebo. That's very kind of you to say so. Yeah, you're right. Gasly has struggled in that Red Bull, hasn't he? He's struggled to match Max, but he's also just struggled to get the best out of it and perhaps himself. And I think it's partly because that Red Bull is a fairly specific car, you know, in terms of the way that it works. And I mean, I'm talking about its aero concept, particularly its aggressive rake angle, which they have pioneered and have developed far more than most of the other teams, and the way then that the rest of the chassis works in conjunction with that aggressive rake angle. I think it probably needs a fairly specific way of driving it, and I think it's partly why we've seen, particularly in the early part of the year, Daniel Ricciardo struggling perhaps in another car, in the Renault, because he's grown so used to the way the Red Bull operates, and other cars maybe don't work in the same way. So I think Gasly will need some time to adapt. If that is the case, I think he will just need some time to adapt his driving style to suit the car. They're not going to change the car to suit him. You know, Max has kind of grown up with that car, of course, so he's well established, he's well used to it. His Formula One career, short career as it is, has been based around that Red Bull way of doing things. So I think we've got to give Gasly a bit more time. I think they will give him a bit more time, and perhaps he just needs to take a step back and understand exactly what the car needs from him to be able to make it work properly, and trying to find a way to adapt his driving style, which I don't imagine is an easy thing to do as a driver. If you've grown up doing something a certain way and been successful doing something a certain way, to then try and change it to sort of do something differently is probably not an easy thing to do. So let's hope he gets a bit more time, because he's a good driver, very good driver, and I think he's got potential to do great things in Formula One. So let's hope he gets that chance. Right, thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate those questions. There were a lot more, but I'll keep this one relatively short because, well, I'm on a train. But I hope you appreciate it. I hope you like it, and if you do, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet and you've just wandered along and found us, then thank you, welcome. But hit subscribe, and then you'll get all the rest of them that come along on semi-regular basis these days. Thanks very much then. Have a good weekend, because I probably won't see you tomorrow, and I'll be back on Monday, hopefully with another Ask Elvis. In fact, Monday I'm in Germany filming with Timo Glock, which will be great, so I can't wait for that. But in the meantime, have a good weekend, and I'll catch you soon. Ta-da.